I'm Wayne Carlton, and welcome to the wilds of British Columbia, in an area that we're after trophy moose, and the best way to get there is with a brush plane. These brush planes land on these landing strips that are normally built during the wintertime. That way the bulldozer can get in and out without bogging up. But getting away from hunting pressure and getting into an area where there are lots of quality moose, this is the way to do it.
We are out west of Fort Nelson, British Columbia, up in the northeast corner of British Columbia, and it helps to have a good camp to come back to after a hard day hunting. But if you're looking at camp and you're looking where you have to go hunt, out here is where the old moose are, and you can see these cut lines are probably going to play an important part. The moose can be anywhere from the cut lines up into that tall timber. One of the places that we hunted was a 360,000 acre burn area. It's about 6 years old, and vegetation was starting to come back up. Just walking these cut lines, trying to call the moose out to us seemed to be the best way to try to do this. As you can see, trying to go through that would be pretty darn tough. Now, to find the moose, you have to find out where they've been recently, and you have to find areas that you can call them in. You may want to look for areas where they've been feeding on the willow tips of the willows. Maybe the scent holes where they've urinated and wallowed in it. It could be the licks where there's a lot of fresh sign in there, or even could be a rub on a tree. But if you're hunting early season, you want to start looking around the lakes. Moose like to stay around the lakes early part of the year. Now, as the rut proceeds and the moose start moving, you have to be able to go with them and try to find out where they're at. And that can mean any place, all the way from the lakes to all this real hilly country that you're looking at, and extremely thick vegetation. Sometimes it's extremely hard to get through this stuff. But if you're after moose, you have to go where they're at. Now, you know, one of the neat things about moose hunting in the areas that you moose hunt, quite often in some parts of the country, elk will overlap in the same areas. So since I like to do a lot of elk calling too, anytime I sit down to eat lunch, or if the moose aren't responding, I'll always try to give it an elk call. And in this case, this is actually the first day of our hunt. This young elk here decided to come on in and investigate all the calling that I was doing. Thought you might enjoy this, so sit back and just listen to this and get an idea as to what goes on when you're trying to call an elk in. Now, what I'm trying to do is just do some nice, simple elk calls and nothing real heavy. I'm just trying to get this elk to come on in. I'm not trying to outdo him. I'm just trying to bugle, just trying to keep his curiosity up. And I'll bugle from one side of my mouth to the other. And you notice I'm not using a grunt tube here. Grunt tube will put a lot more resonance to it, and this is a small bull, so I don't want to scare him. I want him to come in. This area is a 6 point or better, and I guarantee if he had 6 points, I was getting ready to get him. Anytime you can set up and call the elk to you, or if you're set up and you call a moose to you, you're not moving and they are, and it gives you the opportunity to see which way they're going, what's going on, and you get to enjoy everything about the woods. You get to see the animal coming to you. And to me, this is 90% of the hunt, just being able to do this to different animals. And you notice, even though he's close, I'm not really hammering it hard. I'm just bugling nice and easy, trying to get him to come on up to me. And to tell you the truth, I tried my best to grow some antlers on that thing instead of him being a little 3 or 4 point. I was really hoping for a 6 point. When he spots you, don't give up. Just keep calling. Quite often, that'll give you the chance for a shot that if you just shut up there and don't do anything, the guy's going to run away. Whereas if you start calling, sometimes you can hold them in there for a while. See, by using that diaphragm call, it's in my mouth. I'm not moving anything around. The noise is coming out, but there's no movement being made. So learn how to use those elk calls and take a moose hunting with you. You never know what's going to come in.
That one where the elk first was a 6 point. And what you saw, what a 3 point go by. Yeah. Across the over there. I wish that sucker had come up and been that sick. We could have drilled him. Man, that was incredible. Yes. I pulled back on him several times just to see what he would do. He was, he went 30 yards right there. So that was incredible. Just being able to watch him come up that bottom like that. Let's get him loose now.
Now, you may wonder, why was I whispering? Well, folks, I never talk out in the woods. I always whisper. You never have any idea where that critter is or how close he is or when he may come in. And when you're having to go through stuff like this, not only do you not want to talk, you want to dress for it. Quiet clothing so you're not scraping the bark and making any human-made noise. You have to listen, and you don't want to cause a noise that's going to make them run away. You want to attract them to you. And that also goes for your shoes. Being able to have soft rubber bottom boots that will allow you to slip through this without making a lot of scratching and banging type noise. And it's hard to get through this type of vegetation, and that's one place right there that I like using a bow sling. Sometimes you need both hands just to get through the woods. Now, I thought one of the best ways for us to learn how to hunt this country and learn how to hunt and in particularly call moose would be to interview Phil Gillis, the owner of Grizzly Guide Outfitters, and just draw from his experience the ways that he hunts his country and the ways that he calls moose, and also, better still, the way to call these moose over to a cut line so you don't have to drag them through the trees.
Well, folks, this is my second year up in British Columbia. Came up here last year, killed what may be a new world record moose. The hunting was so good, the moose are so big. Phil asked me to come back up, and I couldn't refuse. But in trying to do a moose hunting video, we had a lot of things we had to work through, the amount of country that we had to cover, such things as that. But there's a lot more to moose hunting than just trying to imitate some of the calls. And Phil, one of the things that you got 1.2 million acres here, and one of the things that I see right off the bat is they ain't everywhere, and you got to figure out where they're at.
Yes, that's correct, Wayne. There are a lot of areas here that just won't support a moose. The habitat's not good enough for the feed is not good for moose. They need the willows, the swamp. A lot of this burn area that we're in right now, that's where they are. They're on the edge of some of these clear cuts where they've done logging and where the fires went through and cleaned it right out.
Well, I know in all the driving we've done, we never saw a lot of sign up on top of the hills. It was mainly in the bottoms where there was a lot of marsh area and willows. And I know you got some country that was not burned, and a lot of the pine trees just so thick you can't hardly walk through them. But the moose didn't seem to be in them so much as they were where there's a lot of willows. So those are the kind of areas that you want to try to look for?
Yes, that's correct. That's where they are. Here it's quite easy to hunt here with this burn because there won't. You take an area that is just burned right off, and there isn't any willows growing back up, and they kind of like the higher type willows. They got some protection, and they work that quite a bit as opposed to having the wide open areas.
Well, talking about the willows and also just moose hunting in general, I know your hunting season starts in British Columbia when? In August?
Yes, August the 15th it opens.
August 15th. So are you going to hunt any different August 15th than you do here in October? Is there any difference in the hunting technique that you're going to use? You going to work any lakes or anything more then, or any ideas on that?
Yes, I've at August on the 15th when it opens, they're not in the rut. And you work the lakes, areas like that. That's your best bet. There's no other way, really. It's just about impossible when they're not in the rut to put any kind of a stalk on them. They can hear you 100 times better than you can imagine. And at that time, if you put stalk in through this brush like that, they'll hear you before you even get within range, and they're long gone.
Well, I know having walked behind you here for 2 seasons now and watching you call and watching you hunt, it doesn't take long to realize that these cut lines play a very important part, and you're trying to get the moose as close to them as you can, or you're trying to find them on the cut lines. But as you're going down the road, when you top up on a hill, you get off the bike and you do some calling before you go on down in there. Are you doing the same thing? Are they in the rut in August?
No, they're not.
They're not in the rut.
They up here, higher elevations where we haven't been yet. They start about the 10th of September. Here it's the 20th to the October, about the 15th to the 20th even, the down lower elevations that they come into the rut. But up high in that buckbrush where the cold gets, the frost is on the pumpkin there, and it starts moving here earlier.
So that first part of the season, it's just strictly luck if you happen to get up on one. The best time that, as far as my experience so far in the last 2 years, we've done real good the first 10 days of October, but also the last 10 days, you say, of September would be equally as good?
Yes, it is. Okay. For bow hunting, it's a must to come in those two time frame there. You can get up to them, you can call them, you can work them. You need to get so darn close with the bow that that's just the best time. You take earlier on August calls, with your stands and that, but you're limited to the amount of game you see, because it's just you may see them, but you may never be able to put the stalk on them.
Phil, when we're out looking for sign, and again walking behind you for a couple years now, I've looked at the sign that you looked at, and I know that looks play a part, and I also know that the scent holes play a part. What do you have to say about them as far as in relationship? How can we use them as far as hunting?
Well, the one thing that I do is when you're traveling down these lines, we have cut lines, you see these scent holes where they're pawed out, and you can take a look there. You see, you smell them. They're very, very strong odor on them, Wayne. And if they're really fresh, and you know that a moose is in that vicinity, and at that time, you start your grunting, your call calls, your bull calls, thrash in the bush. You can work him. If he's in that area, he'll answer and he'll come to you.
The one thing I like to interject right here is, if you're out hunting with somebody and if you're out with a guide, when he's trying to call, you have got to be quiet, because unlike any other game that I've hunted, when a moose grunts, and we had one 20 yards away from him, when he grunted, it was so low and his mouth wasn't open, it was just a and I could barely hear it, and I was only 20 yards from him looking at him, and Phil was 30 yards away and he could only hear it once in a while. When you're trying to hear a moose grunt, you better be quiet, and you can't be moving your hands in and out of your pockets, rustling your feet around, and you need to split up, right, if you're two guys hunting together.
Yes, that's correct, Wayne. That's very important. If you have two people standing together, it just doesn't work. If you move like that's enough that you will miss that call, and he could be within 20 yards of you, and when you go, he can hear that and he'll come to you. But if you just make that noise at that particular time, you've lost that animal.
Any kind of human made noise, anything that's not natural out in the wild, when you got something coming in, where no matter what kind of game you're calling, you just blew the party, and you're gonna have to start over again. Phil, I know there's a lot of different ways to call a moose. You can call them by imitating the cow calls, or you can call them by imitating the grunt. Also, you can call them by pouring water in a lake, you told me. You can call them by raking trees and raking brush. Now, we've got some footage on when you're raking the trees and raking the brush. You can see here as you're doing that, the type of motion that you're making, and I know there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. Looking at the calls now, every time you set up and you start calling, you go through a series of calls. How about just doing some of those for me now? It's bull calls and the cow calls.
Okay, we're up here on a knoll right now, and your voice carries down through, we're here a bit of a valley, and it carries down over, and that way you get a lot better carrying capacity with your voice, and they can hear you a lot further away. And I start off, now I'll start off with a cow call. And end with a bull call, like,
That's just a little deeper than what the cow called. The cow also makes that light sounding grunt.
On the end, a lot of times they will, and a lot of times it won't. It's you'll hear a cow calling, and they repeat themselves. They'll call for 15 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes straight, just and just on and on like that with that. Another thing, Wayne, that I think here is with the bulls, you can really blast it out on the top when you're sitting on top of a knoll like that. If the further you carry, you can hear them down like we were on that one, and that was the bigger the animal, you can tell how they grunt if it's a big animal or a little animal. As we had that one that you shot this year, and you could hear him a mile and a half away, and he sounded like he was just next door. And he had a real deep call, whereas a lot of these smaller type animals are the
Well, you know, I know whenever he grunted now, and I haven't heard a lot of moose, I realize that, but I've heard probably 15, 20 moose here easy, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
And he had to be the most vocal moose that we've heard, and when he would do his grunts, it would pop out there, and it would almost like the end of the grunt when it would just really pop and ring through the woods. So it was very impressive, and Phil said that is an old moose and a big moose. He came in, and as you could see that his rack was going downhill. He had reached his prime, was going backwards. His teeth was all worn off, but he was an old, mature bull that was flat getting with it. And now here's something else in talking about calling. I think when people are trying to call a moose and they don't come in, we had one that every time we would make a call to him, he would look and walk the other way. And looking at the hindquarters of the moose that I killed, I can understand why.
looking at this moose back over here, the way that he got beat up on, he's now dead. I can see why they wouldn't come at times, and there's going to be times they're just not going to come in, are they?
Well, that's true. That moose we worked there the other day, somebody just thrashed the bejesus out of him, and he had no go, get up and go. He didn't want to fight. He wasn't interested in any cows. He'd finished. And we grunted, and we got him on film there, but we grunt to him, and he'd just keep moving out.
It was kind of funny. Every time he'd stop, he'd just kind of look around, and you could almost see it in him that he just wanted to lay down and rest and forget about the rest of the world. And I'd do a little call to him, and boy, that sucker just looked back at me and just mosey on off, just keep trucking. But looking at the bruise marks on that big old-timey moose that had survived many winters up in this bad country in the wintertime, I don't know how old he was, but this sucker had been around a day or two. The bruises that he had on the back of his quarters told me that he had put up with a lot, and he had tried to fight to keep the right to breed cows and to work past other bulls to get the cows. And from the looks of his rack, maybe I don't know that he was all that successful being as old as he was. Do you think?
No, I don't think he was. I think he got beat off.
I know that finding the moose is the hardest thing for me to do, and just in my elk hunting that I've done and turkey hunting, any kind of animal that I've tried to call, but to me the most difficult thing was trying to get in an area where they're at so they could hear your call and they would respond. Now that we've looked over some area and we've seen where some moose will be, we know about the scent holes and all that. We know about the licks, why they come in the licks, such as that. When you finally get one call and when you finally get that response and you got a moose going, what are you going to do? You going to wait on him to come, or are you going to go after him, or just what is the best techniques that seems to work for you all the time or most of the time?
Well, I find if you got a bull a long way, say 1.5 miles away, and you hear him grunting, if you walk towards him and you get in, you pull in that distance that he can know by the sound of your voice that you're coming to him, that will hasten him up. He'll come to you a lot faster than he will on his own, and that'll pull him out. We could hear, say, right in the thick of the brush, the thick is thick. And if he can hear us that we've come into his territory, we're coming to him, and then he, if he is any size and if he's on the fight, there is absolutely no way that he'll refuse that challenge.
He's gonna. Well, I know one of the reasons we didn't get the moose that I killed on video is we had him calling an hour before dark, but he would not come. He stayed down in that real thick stuff, and sometimes it seemed like he was within 100 yards of us, beating the trees, and I actually could see the trees moving, but he would not come in. But as soon as we went down a cut line and went towards him, and all of a sudden we were putting a little pressure on him, bam, he came out and he started running to us. Once he starts running, are you going to call the same? Are you going to tone it down, or can you pull him and direct him different ways like you can with elk?
Yeah, one thing that I work with bulls, once they get in close to you, you tone your call down. It's a quieter call at oh. And instead of directing it at the moose, if you can cup your hand and turn around and throw your voice back, and that makes it sound like you're further away, and that draws them in a lot closer. Another trait with a bull moose, when they come in that last 25 to 50 yards in that area, they'll stop grunting and they'll go down to that real low one, and it might only be 1 or 2, and they'll circle. Mm-hmm. They'll work with that wind. A lot of times, if you get them real mad and they're coming in, they won't. If they're cautious, something's just not right, they're not stormed right up, then they'll come in and then they'll do the circle. Mm-hmm. So you've really got to be careful on that last 50 yards, how you work it. If they're coming, you can hear them. You're better off. But a lot of times when you get in like that, if you call, if you don't hear an answer, you're better off being quiet, mm-hmm. because they've already got their direction where you are, and they will eventually come. It might be 15 minutes, might be 10 minutes. You might hear them circling you if they're that cautious. So any other calls at that time will drive them away more than it will benefit.
Well, I know that as the moose are calling to you, and all the moose that you called in the 2 years I've hunted with you,
when a moose starts calling, you seem to try to imitate exactly what he's doing. And it's like you're not trying to out-horse him. You're not trying to outdo him so much as you're trying to be like him. Maybe a reason why, you call a lot of moose in, big ones, small ones, and in between. I know I use the same thing in elk hunting, that if I get an elk bugling, I try to imitate what he sounds like. I don't try to outdo him. I know the adrenaline gets pumping. You want to.
That's a fact.
They've been practicing these calls all year, and you're only out here once a year. So once they get to grunting, you say, "Oh, get you, sucker," and get after them. You may be wondering now, why am I here in the living room of my house instead of out in the field with Phil Gillis? Well, having hunted with Phil and used the moose calls, and as you can tell in the video, we've used a moose call that we were working with and trying to perfect, and I think we're just about there. I thought I could better illustrate the way to use the moose call if I had just the right lighting conditions and all that. So I chose to do it here in the house with a couple of my moose that we called in over the last 2 years. But to imitate the sounds of a bull moose, what I want to do is just basically take the reed and bite down on it about halfway down. When I say bite, just use your lip and make out the sound that you're trying to say when you're trying to make the moose call. You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I'll do that now with the reed. Now again, I'm not putting a lot of pressure on the reed. I'm just putting my lip on the reed. I'm getting the initial stage of it going. I'm making the reed vibrate, and then I just take my mouth off of it to get that wah. And I cut my hands over the end of the tube. Again, it sounds like this. Not real hard. Don't put a lot of pressure on it. If you're first starting to use the reed, it'll probably sound like this. And then you start biting on the reed and opening up your mouth at the same time, cupping the end of the call, and again it'll sound like this. Now if you want to do a cow call, again, just keep your lip on the reed and just imitate that sound as if you were trying to do it with your natural voice. You mouth out a certain sound, and it's and I'll do the same thing now with the call. Again, pressing down on this reed to get that sound. So as you can see, it's not really a hard thing to do. You don't have to put a lot of pressure on the reed itself. You're just trying to get the vibration on the reed, blowing air through it, and mouthing out the sounds that you want to make. Again, here's a cow call, and then I'll do a bull call. Now again, you can see the reeds right here where my index finger is. You want to put your mouth about in that position. As you blow through the call, press down on the reed. It will push it against the housing and then let up on it, and that gives you that wah, wah. Let me demonstrate it for you again. And again, now to do the cow call, I'm just holding down on that reed for a longer period of time and then opening my mouth up. So give that a try and see if it won't help you call that old big moose in out in the woods. Living out in the woods like the moose do here, you have to pay the price, living in the environment, and also living with your buddies. Walking through the woods one day, we smelled a real bad odor, and we found this fellow. This huge moose was evidently fighting with another moose, and the other guy got the better of him, shoved him over a couple of trees,
What do you think?
hung his antlers underneath the tree that you can see there. And this poor guy, even though he was a big moose and later scored out around 190,
which would be in, I think, about the top 10 in Pope and Young. He lay there and died. He could not get his feet back under him. Evidently what had happened, he got pushed over these logs. His feet went out from under him. He slid. His antlers got hung up in the tree, and you can see there where his feet, his hoofs had pawed the ground trying to get back up, but just no way he could do it. That antler right there was just, it was so snug that he couldn't get that one point back under to get it back away from that branch or that tree to get back up. After looking a little further, I noticed that on the tips of the antlers, as you can see here, there was some hair. And it made me look around to see where he had been fighting with the other moose. But just seeing that, you could tell that he had locked it up with another one. And he may have got a little bit of hair, but I'm afraid he did not win the battle. Looking in a direction that where the fight took place, you had to wonder and just imagine the amount of power that went in this fight between two mature bull moose, and seeing what happened to this big guy, it makes you wonder how big the other one was. But you can see where the ground is pretty well cleaned out compared to the surrounding area. You can see where the logs, the bark has been torn off of them. You can see the marks in the soil where their hoofs were digging in, pushing each other. All the limbs tore out of the way where you could walk. Just made you wonder, just everything that took place. And just looking at this, you can just visualize this as this moose was pushed over these two logs, lost his footing, his antlers hung up on that tree right there, and he lay there until he died. You know, a lot of people, when they're out hunting, they get the idea that you just can't call animals in during the middle of the day. But you know, there's not any time during that day that goes by that I'm not trying to call. This is a classic example of what can happen. This is about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd been tired. I was out by myself just trying to call some moose in just to get some more footage of them. And I was resting and calling, did not see or hear anything. And I moved down the cut line and looked down this way, and here was a moose that was coming. He had never said a word, but yet I have to feel he was responding to what I was doing. And the things that I were doing was just doing the basic grunts, just as and I was just playing around, actually just practicing my calls, just trying to get better at it. And this guy came walking in. So I'll let you just sit back and watch just to see what you can do with these animals. He starts to walk away, and I rake some trees, and he comes back in. So just sit back and enjoy watching this moose up real close. This might be a time right here where you'd want to call back behind you to try to make him think you're further away than you actually are. He came to the call. People say moose are dumb. I kind of have a tendency to disagree with that. I don't think they're dumb. I think they get mad and they really don't give a rip. I think they would just as soon come after you as not. And actually, there's a couple of times here that I actually thought he was going to come after me. They're awfully big, and if you're a bow hunter, you have a tendency to want to shoot a little too high. A moose like this stands about 7 foot high at the shoulders, and they're so big and so intimidating you think you can't miss, but it's even that much more important now to just really hold down and take your shot. Now here he's walking away from me, and to get him back out, all I had to do was just take some branches and just rake them on the ground. As you can see, he's starting to come back. And all I did different was to take a branch and just start raking on the ground. And I'm sorry if I'm a little shaky here, but I actually thought this sucker was going to come and get me. Whenever I see slobber dripping out of their mouth, I have some concerns for my life, especially when he's only 20 yards away. But isn't that great? I mean, look, you can just see the size of this animal, the size of his chest, and you can see why, being a bow hunter, you might want to take a broadside shot. There's too much mass there in front for me to want to take it. After getting this close to this thing, my guide told me how many people are chased and hurt by moose, and it even made me a little more frightened for doing what I've done here. As I was looking at him right now, I was really wondering where I could go if I had to, and my options weren't that good. And I think if you were a bow hunter, you might want to go ahead and shoot him right about now. And I tried the limbs again, but once was enough for him. He had seen enough of me. But, you know, I'm amazed at looking at how they go through this real thick stuff. You can see how thick it is in there. And they can move through that and make virtually no noise at all. Of course, that's their living room. It's not ours, and they have adapted to it pretty well. And now if you try to walk where a moose has walked, it's almost impossible to do it without making so much noise you run them away. This one case right here, moose out in front of us. I'm looking for him. We've made quite a bit of noise getting to where we're at. I know he's there, and I'm just starting to see part of him move. He's a pretty good sized moose too, but I'd made so much noise trying to get to him that he was just not about to come to me. It was too much man-made noise for him to want to stand, much less for him to want to come in. Just too much man-made noise. As you can see here, he's getting ready to take off. One thing you want to learn from this is don't quit calling. You never know when another one's going to show up. Now, because of all the calling that we had done earlier with that moose that ran away, we attracted another moose in. My guide started whistling up on the hillside. I turned back around. And I'm trying to get up on a stump so I can get a shot. It's just really difficult with all these willows in here. And it's hard to see. He's just starting to come into view now. But he's not a big moose, but I want to tell you, folks, after 5 days of hunting this stuff, riding all over the world on those Honda 4x4s, I was ready to take any moose that came in. When you got one coming like that, you can just stand without making any motion at all, and quite often you can get away by even being out in the open like that, but you just can't make any movement. My only problem was I can't hit the suckers. And that's after 5 days of hunting. Well, as you can hear, I kept calling. And just hang on, because it's going to come back again. But the vegetation is just so thick I can't get an arrow through there. Problem probably need to let him get just a little bit closer is what I need to do. Still, just can't, no way to get an arrow through that stuff.
You can travel for thousands of miles. You can know how to shoot your equipment. You can know how to call. But if you don't set up right, you are not going to get the shot. And look how thick this vegetation is. It would take a cannon to get through that, much less an arrow.
But I'm a game caller, and my guide's a caller, and we kept calling. We never gave up. I actually thought the moose had gone away, but here he comes again. I'll get him this time. Oh, I still can't get an arrow through that stuff. I don't have the fever right now, I don't think. I'm about to run out of arrows, so I'm trying to be very conservative and take a good shot here, but I just can't seem to get it done. Of course, you can only shoot at them so much, and they're just not going to stay around. They eventually get tired of those big mosquitoes go buzzing by them. But I have to tell you, folks, about this point in time, I was pretty exasperated. I just had to wonder, what was I doing? I'd practiced a lot. My guide was not all that pleased with me having missed this moose a couple times like this. But we kept on and we kept persisting, and it's now approaching about 11 o'clock. But you never know what happens. You just have to press on. Of course, you know when you're in the woods, you never know what you're going to find that will bring you good luck. In this case, I actually believe it was this pile of bear poop, and in fact, probably that bear hair right there. First, I was going to throw it down. I said, no, that's good luck. I better get that. You never can tell what you might need out in the woods to bring you luck. So I'm going to take that with me, see if it won't change my luck. That's good luck. Changed my luck it did. My guide got to beating on some trees, and this moose started beating back. We went down and set up on him about 150 yards away. And I noticed one of the first things I saw was something looked like a tree, an entire tree moving. And it was him, the one I'd come after. I don't want to tell you my heart wasn't beating because I was trying to figure out how to get it back inside of my shirt. All my years of bow hunting were flashing by in front of me. I kept saying to myself, don't screw up now. And he would have to stop behind a tree I had to let down. I figured it was over then. But he just didn't pick me up. And it was now or never. I had to stand up trying to shoot through the willows. I had a different angle than the cameraman did, so it's hard to see.
Good one. Woo!
Even though I was excited, I was still concerned because I'd seen where the arrowhead went, and I was afraid I'd went between the lungs and the backbone, which could be a very bad hit. You can go there and not get anything. There was some blood on some of the branches, some of the small trees, but it didn't take long, and the blood trail played out pretty quickly. We decided the next best thing to do was to split up and try to find some sign, and even though I heard him holler, it just didn't register. I was so numb because I thought I had lost him. And they had to just holler at me several times.
57.
57, eh?
Oh,
And after
I'm
all
so
that,
lucky.
Try that. 57?
54, I think.
You got 57 inches. 2 inches out.
Oh.
This is what the big one is right here. If it would have come in and filled in here, you got yourself a book.
We got some Pope and Younger there.
Yeah, Pope and Young guarantee.
Good calling.
Good shot. Good shot, Wayne.
I tell you, hitting high like I did, I figured I'd miss the lungs, and just hoping that I hit that artery, and evidently I must have.
Beautiful animal.
He went a long ways, didn't he?
Yeah.
Is this your first bow hunt moose?
Yes, it is.
That's a good way to start, isn't it? Isn't he great? I got just a place for him in that house of mine. Dear God, how big he is. Oh.
It's beautiful. That's what hunting's all about, folks.
If you could have seen that, you didn't get to see the shot because of the batteries. Came 25 yards, broadside. I took my time when I aimed, and I still hit high. And I'm telling you, just sitting right here, I'm extremely fortunate to be able to have this one, because it could have sure went the other way. Whew, you sure did your job.
Well, thank you.
Grizzly guiding outfitters, I'd dang get them. Look at this. Look at that. Nostrils on it. My God. I hit an artery. That's what got him, because he wouldn't have went this far off a lung shot. Oh, I'm so lucky. Whew. High country bows on the road. They hummed it in there.
Well, you reinstate my faith in bow hunting.
Well, I tell you what, mine was dwindling there, boy. I was really having a lean-to with the man upstairs over there.
Likewise, I went back and started tracking him from scratch.
Oh my God. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that just simply amazing? I've been looking at these hoofs the whole time, you know? Thinking, my God, they gotta carry a heck of a body. And there he is right there.
To me, you just cannot get an estimate of how big these guys are until you try to turn them over. And here we are, two grown men, and it is all I want, just trying to get this critter back on his back.
His head's gotta be pulled around more.
They are magnificent. Of course, after all that, then the work starts. You've got to come and get him.
There, right on. The money. Now we need rope.
It's always
I
good
got
if you
him
can,
now.
once
Let
you
him
get
know.
them up on the back, if you can keep them up that way. And to be honest with you, without two guys there, you would just have to do this on the side. You wouldn't be able to roll him over on his back. But now we got him propped up. Of course, once you got one down, you got to go get him. And I'll tell you the truth, folks, trying to go get one of these critters after you've got him down can be a major ordeal. It took us about 2 hours just to cut our way into where he's at. And that's cutting our way on a cut line that had been cut out years ago previously. But you can see all the trees that have fallen over it. These little four-wheel vehicles just proved invaluable. They're extremely tough. They go just about anywhere. Just getting there and getting through all these willows, going through the different creeks we had to go through. The way that we got him back out was to quarter him up, took the hands and the shoulders off of the back strap and the head. Just trying to get it all on these two trailers and get back out. Proved to be quite a job. And just trying to get back through these bogs with all this proved to be almost as much a challenge as it was trying to walk through it. Of course, we're getting closer to camp. The adrenaline's starting to slow down a little bit, but we've got our trophy. And we've had our time. And it's something I'll never forget. Going back to a good camp, good food, and a hot shower after 5 days of hard hunting. It doesn't get any better than this.
If you're looking for a good area to hunt quality moose and to go with a great guide, you can't find a better area or a better guide than Phil Gillis. And he's certainly got the trophies, -1. Until the next Carlton's Wild Country, this is Wayne Carlton saying stay in the woods.